Welcome to the Fire Family Collective podcast, the show dedicated to supporting the unsung heroes of the fire service, the wives, partners, and families who hold down the fort while their firefighters serve.
This episode of the Fire Family Collective podcast is brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation, the City of Ventura Parks and Rec Department, the Gene Haas Foundation, and SoCal Edison. If you would like to support our mission to strengthen firefighter families, please click the link in the show notes or visit us at firefamilycollective.org.
All right, welcome to the Fire Family Collective. This is an exciting episode we have here. We have three special guests with us today. We have Chris, Stephanie, and Dan, and I'm so honored to be speaking with them. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll dive in. So, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself first, please?
Sure, thank you. My name is Chris Stine. I'm currently the president of the Los Angeles Firemen's Relief Association and the Widows, Orphans, and Disabled Firefighters Fund.
Thanks for being here. Stephanie?
Hi, my name's Stephanie Lievense. I am married to Dan Lievense, who is a fire captain for the LA City Fire Department. I'm also a mom and a therapist.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And Dan?
Dan Lievense, captain with the Los Angeles City Fire Department.
Thank you for being here. So I know for myself, as being a fire wife and having the experience of my firefighter go off and fight fires, I'm not always connected to what's really happening because I need to dissociate a little bit to protect myself. So I'm excited to have this conversation to talk about the realities of actually when the fire hits home and what that looks like in our community and our neighborhood, and hear firsthand from your perspective with the Eaton Fire that took place in January of 2025 this year. Who wants to share first a little bit about that experience from your perspective? So any of you?
I can jump in and
Great.
tell you my personal experience of on the night of January 7th, I was actually at work with the Los Angeles Fire Department. I was in contact with my family, telling them that, hey, I probably won't be coming home because the Palisades fire was burning. Later on that night, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I got a text from my son that said, hey, Dad, there's a fire around our neighborhood. He sent me a couple pictures. I wasn't too concerned. It looked like it was 3 or 4 miles from where I live, but it was up in the mountains. So I just sort of played it off like I do. I was like, oh, it can't come to my neighborhood. It's not going to happen to me. And then as the night wore on, I actually got deployed to another fire called the Hearst Fire. So when I was out there fighting that fire, my son was giving me updates. I was talking to my wife, and I was like, hey, it still looks like it's not coming towards our neighborhood. I had not heard that any homes were burning in Altadena, but I did hear that a lot of homes up in the Palisades were burning. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get relieved. And then it just so happened that about 4 o'clock in the morning, my son sends me a little picture and tells me, Dad, I think there's a house on fire up the street. And when you hear that and you're not able to actually be there, it's pretty hard to take, because now I'm scrambling to try to figure out, okay, what's next? I mean, I've talked to my wife about evacuation. We've talked about how I deal with the public, but I've never actually had to have my family evacuate. So it was really hard.
Yeah, and that's, for me, like, I just relate totally different, but I try not to think about all this stuff. And we have a group, Wives Text, and they texted me a few months ago about fire happening. I have no idea what's going on. And the fear that set in just from this text, I can't imagine if it was actually a house on my street. So your son told you a house on your street was burning, and you're thinking, how do I, protect my family? And Stephanie, what do we do next? I'm on duty.
Yeah, it's when you hear that and then you see the smoke conditions outside, you're like, uh-oh, it's bad. And I told my son, hey, hang up with me, call 911. He does, and basically the 911 operator said, you need to evacuate. So he calls me right back and says, Dad, they're not sending anybody. We need to evacuate. And I guess around the same time, a police sheriff came down our street just over the loudspeaker saying, hey, it's time to go. So I had to tell my son and then my wife, like, okay, that's it. You guys got to go. And I think I got to commend my wife for the tremendous job she did of, I have a younger son, waking him up. She got my younger son, got our pets. My mom, who lives next door to me, both my older son, they went over and got her and her pets. And basically, I think they just drove away, not being able to see the other side of the street because of the smoke conditions and probably realizing that might be the last time we see our house. And for me, it was just, there was nothing I could do. I was stuck on another fire and I felt, just bad because I wasn't there.
Right. So you're calling to protect people you love in our community, and then it's happening at home, and you're helpless for your closest people.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, what was that like from your perspective, with you at home with your boys and knowing your mother-in-law is next door?
Well, our son James is 20 and he wants to be a firefighter. So that's his goal, and we were kind of taking a wait and see approach. And how was it? It was scary. It was scary. I had, like Dan, it seemed so far away. It seemed like there's no way it's going to get to our neighborhood. And I took a nap and woke up and realized, oh, we got to get out of here.
Wow.
But, I think being the wife of a firefighter, as you probably know, Amanda, like you do get kind of used to being on your own, to handling things because your husband isn't around, because they're doing such good work. But so it felt, I felt embarrassed that I had waited so long. At the same time, I was really glad that my son James had been hosing down our house and my mother-in-law's house. I think that made a huge difference in the fact that they didn't burn down, honestly. So he was kind of on it with Dan's guidance, and when it was time to go, we went. And that was stressful. It was stressful. My mother-in-law is older. It was scary, especially for her. She has a dog and 2 cats. We have a dog and a cat. Getting those animals who are already a little bit scared into the car was something. And I mean, I don't know if we've talked about this at all, but my son James, who's 20, wanted to stay because my brother-in-law, Matt Lievense, who's also a firefighter for the LA City Fire Department, was coming from San Dimas to help because it's his mom's house and his brother's house. So leaving my 20-year-old son there as I saw palm trees flaming through the air was probably the hardest part of the whole thing.
I cannot imagine that.
And also, he is so trustworthy. I knew he wouldn't let himself be in an unsafe situation. So I could trust him, and I had a good feeling that he wouldn't stick around if he was unsafe. It ended up being probably something that saved our house.
Right.
He was still there. So
yeah. Were any of your other neighbors still staying behind?
Not at that point, I don't think. I think everybody had left at that point, except for James.
Wow.
Yeah. It was not my favorite moment.
Yeah. So how long was he by himself and you were like, what's going to happen?
I was on the phone with him for a good part of that. When the house across the street caught on fire, across the street from our house, or sometime near that, as this fire moved down the street, he got in his car, which was running, and headed south. So he did drive away for a while, and probably within 10 minutes, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my brother-in-law, Matt, got there. So then together they came back. And I talked to Matt too. during that time and told him, I love my brother-in-law. He's an amazing human being. But I was like, it's my boy. It's
Right.
on you.
Yeah. Keep my baby
Yeah.
safe. My house
Yes.
isn't as important as my baby.
100%. Let it burn and make use of James, but it's on you now, Matt. And Matt was so great. He was like, he said, I hear you. I got you. I'm not going to let anything happen to him.
That's amazing. That's like a 2.5, 3 hour drive for your brother-in-law to come up from San Diego and
San Dimas.
San Dimas. Okay.
But the traffic was horrendous. He has great stories about maybe some off-roading to get to us quickly. It all happened very, very fast. It went from seeming very far away to on our street in a very short amount of time.
Well, and like you said, we had the Palisades fires going on here as well.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of resources being utilized in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was chaos for Southern California. Wow. So now fast forward a little bit. What ended up happening? Dan, did you get to come home? Were you relieved that morning? Were you still on shift?
Yeah. So luckily, like Steph was saying, we're talking what for me seemed like an eternity, but in reality, it was probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of, hey, you guys got to go, to I called my battalion chief and said, hey, I have my relief coming in. I need to make relief. I need to get home. And so my brother and James were here for probably about a half hour before I was able to get home. And just with our knowledge, and somehow we made a couple right decisions to go up to the local fire station, LA County, and borrow some hose from them. We knew we had a fire hydrant right across the street. And then it was like, okay, we're going to protect my house and we're going to protect my mom's house, but we got a couple more neighbors. Let's protect those houses. Okay, let's cut it off at the end of this street. So we fought fire for probably 24 to 36 straight hours without any fire engines or trucks, which is something that, as a member of the Los Angeles Fire Department, I never thought would happen. That I'm going to fight this amount of fire for this long and not see any help come. It was a little overwhelming. At the same time, I was grateful to have my brother and my son there. But like Steph was saying, the whole time I'm worried, like, if something happens to James, I'm never going to live it down. And if something happens to my brother, also. So constantly worrying about them, and then just doing great work of putting the fire out and then making sure everybody's okay, using what we had, the hose that we were able to secure from the local fire station. My brother had a couple fittings, so we were able to maneuver stuff around, and it worked out good.
That's amazing. And now from your perspective, Stephanie, Dan's gotten off shift. You add someone else you love and care about that's in the midst of all this. And where are you at with that?
Oh, complete relief. I mean, I don't know if it's not the right thing to do, but I knew once Dan was there that everybody would be okay. I felt complete relief. Like, finally. I knew he'd handle it well. He'd know what to do and he'd make sure everybody stayed safe. So, and I was at my son's apartment in Long Beach. He goes to school there with my other son, William. We were just sort of waiting to figure out if we could be useful or not. And I will say this, I mean, I think you heard the emotion in Dan's voice just there a little bit, and he is not an emotional person in general. So, and I'll not forget, around, maybe it was like around 3 p.m., 3 to 5 p.m., he said, would you guys come back? Would you come back? And I knew he was tired or alone. I don't know exactly what it was, honey, but that's not like him. He'd normally say, no, I got it. We're fine. We don't, you stay out there. But he said, would you come back? And so we did. We came back, and I think that was the right thing to do. It was still super smoky.
Yeah. So at this
But we were
point,
glad to all be together.
yeah. So at this point, you weren't worried about the safety of the fire with the houses, and you
No.
just were like, we need to be together as a family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's just unbelievable. And I didn't realize that there weren't any resources from the county department that is, supposed to have that area for their coverage. So that's just even more mind blowing to me. I can't imagine.
But I mean, Dan, you could speak to this more than me. I don't think they weren't doing anything. The whole place was on fire.
Yeah.
There aren't enough fire engines or firefighters. They were protecting and serving. They just couldn't be everywhere all at once.
Right.
So, at least that's how I hold it in mind. I don't know, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a firefighter, they were around. I mean, just to give you a perspective of like our block is 20 houses, and 16 of them completely burned down.
Oh my gosh.
So only 4 houses on my street survived. So we are sort of right in the middle of all the chaos. And we live 2 blocks from a major street, and a lot of the fire resources were over there fighting big commercial fires. Would I have liked to see a fire engine pull down my street? Yeah, but it just didn't happen. But I also felt confident with my brother, my son, that we may not need them. We can handle this. The main fire front blew through, so I think we'll be okay. It wasn't like I was going to go out there and wave them down. It was just like they didn't come. They were doing other things. They were in the neighborhood. They were just fighting other fires.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and those are, parts of the unique challenges that you can understand from a different perspective. And yeah, so only 4 houses survived. I can't believe that your brave 20-year-old son, your brother driving up, you getting off shift, racing home. There's just so many layers to the craziness. And I just truly can't imagine. So I'm so glad that you're all safe and that, a few of your neighbors were able to also save their homes. And looking back on this experience, what perspective might have changed for you as a couple and what you're, going to do maybe differently in the future? Or how would you share with us in our community in this Fire Family Collective what we might be able to do to prepare ourselves? Hopefully this doesn't happen, but we can't be naive and think that it won't. So
I can start. I think our family is one where we really trust each other. And I don't know how you get through something like this or other hard things without having great, great trust in one another. And I think we definitely had that, even in our 20-year-old son. And we do in our 18-year-old son as well, younger. So, but yeah, trusting one another to make good choices and that we're all in our own right able to take care of ourselves and rely on each other at the same time. So, I mean, I think that's something that was helpful for us. I think in the future, I would not have gone to sleep. I would have stayed awake and been back up to my 20-year-old keeping watch, just because maybe we would have left a little sooner. But maybe not. To be honest, I think the fact that we stayed longer helped save our house and my mother-in-law's house and other people's houses. So I don't know.
yeah.
Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the trust each other. I also know that in the way I look at it for the firefighters aspect of to not become complacent. I mean, I can't tell you that I didn't think this would ever happen to me. And I've been to plenty of brush fires. I've been to, we always talk about the big earthquake. And then, I mean, wherever you guys are, if you live by the ocean, you need to think about like, okay, if I'm not here, how is my wife and my kids going to handle this situation? It's a lot easier if I would have been there to make those critical decisions, but there's a good chance that we are not going to be able to be there. And so
Mm-hmm.
the strength and the tremendous love and compassion and trust you have in your wife and your kids to make those decisions when you're not there, you have to instill nothing but positivity for them to be able to have a positive outcome.
I think that's huge, and both of you touched on it, right? Like, we as the partners are home alone a lot and making these decisions as solo parents with you in mind, right? What we've already talked about in our relationship, and to feel empowered in the moment of something stressful where we can't shoot you a quick text or a phone call and know, like, Dan has complete trust in me, Stephanie has complete trust in me, and I'm making this decision knowing that, this is what's best for our family in this moment. It's just another aspect, right, of being a fire family. So it's in so many parts of our lives. It's just there.
Did you know the Fire Family Collective has a parenting course for firefighter wives and partners? Join Amanda Ellis, fire wife and mother of two, and Tiffany Atala, also a fire wife, mother of two, and a licensed marriage and family therapist, as they guide you through navigating parenthood at every stage. Learn how to build resilience, foster connection, and create a strong family unit amidst the unpredictable nature of fire life. Join the Fire Family Collective to access the course. A link is in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask Chris, so what does this look like now from your side of things, and what you're helping with after the fact?
Yeah, so after this whole thing, we've learned a great deal about how to support our folks, as our main role is to support widows, orphans, disabled firefighters. But this was a new an area that we don't normally do all the time, and we serve our people, but it's usually for someone who's sick, somebody who's been injured, for our dependents, our surviving spouses of fallen firefighters. But this is something a little bit different. I think the last time we've dealt with this would be the Northridge earthquake was the last big incident we had where we had folks that were affected. One of the things that we did early on to help us in getting aid out to the Lievense family and a lot of the other families that were in Eaton is we had a map built about 6 months before this happened. It was built by our GS mapping for the city. And then what they did is they plotted on that map every member of our association and where they lived in the whole United States. And so what they did is they overlaid the Eaton Fire and the Palisades Fire on this map. And I had that map within about, I'd say, 6 hours of the incident, about 8 hours of the incident happening. So that morning, like when Dan was talking about at 4 a.m., I was coming into work that morning at 5 a.m. and drove right past it because our office is only about 5 or 10 minutes from Eaton. And so I got on the computer, we started plotting these addresses and figuring out which firefighters were in that impact area. And then we were able to start calling and figuring out which firefighters had lost their homes, which firefighters were staying and defending their homes, and which ones were displaced. And so that enabled us to start to get aid out the door. And with the Lievense family, with Dan specifically, I was able to get into Eaton with another firefighter who lives in the area, LA City firefighter, and we were driving around to each one of these addresses, checking on houses. And I happened to pull up to Dan's house. I think it was that day 2, Dan? I
Yeah.
pulled up, and so I went to his street because I knew that street had several firefighters on it, and him and his son were out front, like it looked like they'd been fighting fire for 36 hours the way they looked. And but they were, at that point, the main part was already done. The fire had come through, and they were obviously in a lot better place at that point. But yeah, so we drove around house to house looking for what we could do and figuring out how can we support these families for the next days, weeks, months to come.
That's an incredible resource. I can't even picture this cool map, like you said, and just being able to have that information to go and drive out and face to face see your people and ask that question, like, what do you need? How can we help? I mean, that is huge. And that is for me, like one of the big visions of this Fire Family Collective, right, is to be able to have resources like that where we can tap into and just get the help that people need, give them the resources, and, work with each other in the ways that we can to support this greater network that we have of the people that matter most to us. So that's amazing to me. And I'm so glad you guys just coincidentally made that map, like you said, a few months before, and had that to be able to utilize in this, tragic crisis.
Yeah, it was amazing. We had a crew that was actually delivering supplies out to the area. So Dan wanted to stay, obviously, and protect his home because of all the aftermath of the fire. So we were able to deliver some supplies to the Lievense family. So we were able to get them some basic needs that they needed to be able to stay there without, they didn't have any power. There was no services. All those things were not up and running. So we, through some of our resources and logistical folks, were able to get supplies out to them and other firefighting families too that needed that support. So we learned a lot though, and we'll hopefully be sharing that, with other organizations to try and better support not only the firefighters, but like Dan was saying, most of the time we're probably not going to be there. That's just the way it works out normally, right? So, but what we want to do is establish a volunteer group of people that can go out and help some of these families. Probably retired firefighters would be a great resource to send out to a community to help support them, as we probably will be committed to doing the work, that we need to do, just like everyone else.
Right. And that's huge, because you're like Dan and I were talking before we actually started recording, right? He's in over 20 years of his career. And once he does get to retirement, that doesn't just leave who he is as a person. So being able to know maybe he's going to be a part of this like volunteer resource that you said, but still matters, makes an impact, gives him this purpose that still is really near and dear, ingrained in who he is. Those are the types of things, like, I know I really think my husband will still need in his life when we get to that phase, because you guys, this is part of you, you're a whole person, but this is very much who you are. And so that's a really great idea to involve retirees and have them be a resource when your other frontline personnel are on the front lines. So I love that idea. Well, I am just in awe. I am going to digest all of this, and I think our listeners will be really grateful to hear the stories that you all have shared, the resources that are coming out of it, the different just, ways that we show up for one another here in the Fire family. And I'm grateful for all of you taking the time to chat with me. Does anybody want to say anything else before we head out?
I would like to say, thank Chris and the Relief Association, because the long-term recovery, it's hard. It's when you're looking across the street and you're hearing trucks back up and, take out all the burned down lots. And then you realize the amount of smoke damage my house did suffer, and everything, to be able to have a organization that is willing to stand there. Like 2 days after the fire, Steph and my younger son were evacuated when the National Guard came in. And basically, the relief was able to give us a little bit of money that helped us out with Airbnb, that helped us out with her going and buying clothes and buying food until we can try to get all of the insurance to balance out and the checks to make sense. And then that was just a huge relief off of my shoulders, that I can sit here and stay at my house. And like Chris was saying, he brought out a Starlink. So we were able to have a Starlink to have internet connection. So I was able to have contact with my wife. We were able to get fuel so I could run a generator, not just for my house, but for my neighbor's house. One of them had a koi pond. So the organization, the Relief Association, did a tremendous job in supporting us financially, which I think enabled me to get through it a lot better than if I didn't have that organization. So thanks to the Relief for that.
I second and third all of that. You're never alone when you're a part of a firefighting family, and that was super evident after this. it was very hard the weeks after when we couldn't come back and Dan was on his own with no water, no power, no gas, no nothing. It was like camping. But and Chris, it means so much that you actually came. Like that's a really big deal. And that's what firefighters do, right? Is they show up on scene. But that's a really big deal. It was a lonely time for Dan and James and there were like 2 other neighbors that stayed, but just thank you for that.
And I think that's huge.
Yeah, not a problem to do. It's out of all the work I think we do, firefighting is great work. This work of taking care of each other, I think, rises to a higher level than the actual work does. Just taking care of each other to make sure we get to the end of the line and we get to reach that retirement takes everyone to supporting each other in order for us to get there successfully. So,
well, sign me up if you have any retired wives that you need help with.
we always need room for volunteers. You're in. I'll just tell you right now. I got a spot for you.
Okay. I'll make a casserole.
All right.
Oh,
We are so grateful. I am just so in awe. Thank you, Chris and Stephanie and Dan, for taking time to be with the Fire Family Collective today, and just really appreciate you and an honor I got to spend time with you. Thank you for your bravery and sharing your stories, and we will talk more. I know it. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you, Amanda. Thank you.